Great. Hi class, my name is Tommy Erickson and I am in section 2 of East Asia and the World. And you probably guessed it from this picture and the title that we will be talking about sushi today. More importantly, we will be talking about the evolution of sushi and how it reflects the cultural interactions between East Asia and the world. Everyone here has probably heard of sushi, especially in the US. Sushi has gained so much popularity in recent years that it is now considered cool to eat raw fish, but it hasn't always been like this. Sushi today is the product of the innovation and the interconnectedness of diversity of East and West cultures. But in order to fully understand the impact of sushi and how it has been a cultural interaction between East and Asia and the world, we will start with the history of sushi, then discuss its first appearance in the US, and how its perceptions have changed over time, and how sushi has evolved over time. But mainly, we will be discussing the effect of the Western influence on sushi. So first, we will start with the history of sushi. And since sushi is widely known to be from Japanese culture, it may surprise you to know that sushi's roots actually tie back to East China from the 2nd century BC. Some other resources that I found say that the story began in Thailand along the Mekong River. So for the purposes of accuracy, we can conclude that the birthplace of sushi is just in the Southeast Asia region. And in this picture up here, we can see that there are 5 drawings. And these 5 drawings represent the 5 generations of sushi. And this is according to Yoko Isasi, who is a Japanese cooking class teacher born in the Gifu prefecture in Japan, who immigrated to America to teach her Japanese culinary skills that she learned in Japan. And so the first drawing here we have is the nare sushi. And then here we have hanare sushi, which this is the rice that was stuffed inside. And then we have the hayanare sushi, then the edomae sushi, and then finally our modern day sushi that we have today. And here I found this really cool ukiyo-e, which is spelled right here, of a Japanese woman eating sushi with chopsticks with her son. All right, so first we will start with the nare sushi. This is basically barrel fermented fish with rice. This idea started in the rice fields of East China, and when there's a rainy season, the rice fields usually flood, and along with the flooding, we have comes an abundance of fish. And since there wasn't any refrigeration at the time, since the 2nd century BC, they have found a way to preserve the fish for a longer period of time so that they're not wasting this abundance of food. And so they would take these fish that they would capture, gut it, and rub it with salt, and pickle it in a wooden barrel for a few months. Then after that, they would scrape the excess salt off and stuff the belly with rice. So once they have dozens of these rice stuffed fish, they would all be packed in a wooden barrel and weighed down with a heavy stone. The fish would then sit for a year before being cracked open for consumption. And so now we have the hanare sushi. This is when this concept actually came to Japan. And the reason why it didn't stay in China is due to the nomadic tribes who preferred to eat red meat rather than fish. And an extra note to take for the hanare, or just the nare sushi, is that the rice and salt was discarded and only used for fish preservation, meaning that they did not eat the fish with the rice. And that's quite understandable because the rice probably smelled really bad because it sat there for over a year with the fish. Now the hanare sushi is different in which now it's only being preserved from 1 to 4 weeks instead of a year. And people actually began eating the rice with the fish at this time. And here in this picture, you can see the fish with the rice on top of it. Yeah. And so, but they were still kept in barrels, barrel fermented before this process. So yeah. And so now we have the Hayanare sushi from the time period of 14th century to 18th century. And this is really interesting because the vinegar industry exploded in the 13th century Japan, and it came from sake, which is right here. And it's all based on rice, so it's rice vinegar. And so here in the 14th century, we're seeing box-pressed cured fish over vinegar seasoned rice. So people started adding vinegar to the rice instead of waiting for the lactic acid to develop from the fermentation process. And depending on the prefecture, which here we see all the prefectures in color-coded, the rice, once the rice is packed under the slices of fish and pressed with a wooden box for hours or days, depending on the prefecture, they would use different leaves to wrap the sushi. And so some prefectures used bamboos and others used different types of leaves. And so now we get into the Edo Maya sushi. And here, just a reminder that the Edo period was the samurai period. And it's Edo, Japan is also modern day Tokyo today. And Edo, Japan was dense with people, and thus there were a lot of fires that came with it, and as you can see in this drawing right here. And so after this great big fire, a lot of blue-collared workers moved to Edo to start rebuilding the streets. Yeah, and so this is where the nigiri came popular or was developed. And it basically is pre-cured fish over vinegar seasoned rice, and it took only a few hours to a day. And the real difference is that the rice is now packed with the hands. And so there were sushi stands along the streets, and when the blue-collared workers were done with their jobs, they would come to these stands and start buying. And so this really led to the success of Japanese street food culture. And so finally, we have modern day sushi, which comes from the late 20th century to now in the 21st century. And here we have the raw fish. Actually, tuna wasn't used in sushi until the American occupation in Japan, where Americans preferred fattier foods, and thus, since tuna is quite a fatty fish, that became into a sushi. And then over here, we see the California roll, which is where sushi began booming in America, was California. And in order for Americans to get over the consumption of raw fish, they would start with imitation crab, avocado, and cucumber as kind of like their gateway drug into sushi. And here we can also see that they have inverted the sushi, where the rice is on the outside and the seaweed is on the inside. And then as time goes on, we have this beautiful dish of all types of seasonings and different combination of flavors. And we'll see that throughout as the sushi gets more modern. And the preparation time for all this sushi is pretty instant, and that is all thanks to the refrigerator. And so the refrigerator was invented in the late 20th century, which explains how this modern day sushi, the preparation time is so short. And so as I was researching the 5 generations of sushi, I came across this amazing quote that really reflects the sushi's evolution. And that is, quote, "Each new generation of sushi reflects the attitudes of its time." And this really resonated with me because it's quite true, as we saw throughout the whole evolution stages of sushi. We saw its purpose and how it has served as a food to the people at that time. And so first, the rice was just used to preserve the fish for later consumption, and then later on, uh, rice became part of the meal. And then now it's kind of like a form of art where just looking at the dish is just quite beautiful. And here we have the conveyor belts, which is very modern day, instead of people coming and serving it to you. And here we have my favorite restaurant in Japan, which is Kura Sushi. And that's really fun because the sushi is also on a conveyor belt and you get to um, choose what type of sushi you get and see all the different types of sushi that they offer. And so now we are getting into the Western influence of sushi. So the dish was brought over to the West by Japanese immigrants in the 1900s after the Meiji Restoration. But it only became popular after World War II, which is quite understandable. In the 1960s, the idea of eating raw fish took some getting used to, which led to the creation of the California roll, as we discussed. And in Japanese, that's called the makizushi roll, where there's cucumber, crab meat, avocado with white rice. And here we start to see the most recent sushi dishes, where up here it's called the dragon roll. We see a lot of different seasonings and flavors and lots of color. And down here we have the Godzilla roll, where they even go to the depths of deep frying their sushi. And so that's really how the West has taken this Japanese dish and turned it into their own. And here we have a picture of me with my favorite sushi, which is the salmon nigiri. And yeah. And so to wrap things up, um, we can see that sushi is really important and insightful into the cultural interaction between the East Asia and the world, specifically America. And through this, it's really cool how the sushi that we know of today has only been here since the 20th century, because that was around the time frame that refrigeration became widely used. And so thanks to technological development and the collaboration and the sharing of different cultures, we have come into this beautiful work of art and food that we know of today. And so yeah, that's sushi.